Hansen Direct series brings together people from the industry and people from specialized fields of business to discuss different practical aspects of what is happening in the world today. And we believe that it is these leaders who have real world experience who will take the world into whom we have a lot of learning from, and especially in the current series which we have been running, which is about data. That's very important. So since we are speaking about data, I have a simple question which any of you are welcome to answer. What do you see in the picture is a truck. There is a large container behind it. What do you think the container carries? Any answers? Please share on chat. US looking truck. So it's from the Western world. And you'll be very surprised to know the answer. And that's the reason why I shared this with you. This entire large container which you see in front of you, which is carried on a truck, is a service that is offered by Amazon Web Services called Snowmobile. Snowmobile actually takes data into the container through a pipe and stores it at AWS. This happens on a regular basis for the large quantum of data that is coming out of places like NYSE. So there is huge amount of this was just to explain to you the scale that we're talking about and what we mean when we say large amount of data. Just to give you another fun fact, each of these snowmobiles carry 100 petabytes of data. When we say petabytes, most of us have been very excited about the fact that when we got a mobile phone, it had 64 GB, 128 GB storage. Now, 1000 GB or 1024 GB is what is TB, a terabyte. 1000 times of that, and this is an exponential scale that is going on. 1000 times of that is what is a petabyte. So imagine 100 petabytes of data which comes from a stock exchange, goes into this truck, and that's what is transported to AWS center for storage. That's what we mean when we say data. And this is a story that's related to the financial world, so very relevant for today. Because the webinar topic that we have for today is what is the new direction for data in the BFSI industry? One of the first industries to get onto the data bandwagon, where huge amount of data is generated, consumed and used for business purpose, and the marriage of BFSI with data is something that is given. That's a very required. So let me introduce the two speakers for today. Amit Wagh is a senior financial advisor, and he has been related to the BFSI, working with the BFSI industry through many consulting firms. He has been with Pricewaterhouse, he's been with Cognizant and KPMG. He actually spent 8 years as managing director of financial services for Accenture Strategy. So his knowledge and the width of what he has seen, the kind of companies that he has dealt with, be it banks, financial institutions, NBFCs, insurance, all put together is huge. And Rahoul Anders, we know very well. Rahoul is somebody who has been a close associate who has 15 years of experience in market research and analytics. He's worked with multinational as well as Indian companies. Set up a company in 2010 which is managing data, is now called as Kentrix. And Kentrix has data at a very granular level for 91.5 crore Indians. That's huge. So from here on, I would like to get the speakers, get onto the topic. Basically, what we're starting with is saying that BFSI as an industry has been something that has been an industry that has used data widely, well before the others came under the map. And yet the system is evolving. The data ecosystem is evolving in financial services. So what are the challenges that BFSI players are facing today? What is the stage at which the industry is, and what are the challenges that the players are facing today? That's what I would like to ask Rahoul Anders first.
Yeah, thank you, Zaid, for this introduction, and my pleasure to be part of this discussion here today with Amit and share with him views and also gather from his experience views on the developments, past, present, future in the BFSI sector in India. We have been also part of this for some time now, since 2010, as mentioned, and I think in light also of the digital transformation and also the changes and trends in customer demands, where one has clearly understood from product-driven or product-centric to be customer-centric, this transformation throws up a lot of more data and information which you can gather about customers. Of course, there's data privacy and also consumer protection at work, which is at the same time as industries and technologies evolve to gather information, something like the left and the right leg, which has to come over the whole ecosystem of industries, service providers, and continuous growth, that it has an equilibrium, but the customer today, if we talk about it, is faster and more vehemently demanding experiences. So a challenge is also how to meet these in real time, how to also over here understand customers who are getting a synfluid of possibilities through digital connect, to be knowledgeable about options, products, to also not anymore in the BFSI sector, like traditionally our grandparents maybe go once a week to the bank branch, say hello to their relationship manager, have a cup of coffee over there, and pick up money for the weekend. Every transaction is today also UPI based, and if one just looks at this, digital payments by 260 million distinct users across the country. 93% payments were completed digitally just in the recent past, and out of which 50% through QR codes. That is clearly speaking a language that consumers, customers want to be served fast, act fast digitally, and here, of course, also being the next level close to customers is, I think, one of the bigger challenges.
Zaid, you're on mute.
Sorry, Rahoul. What I was saying is that what you said is absolutely right. I would like Amit to speak about how an industry that came to the fore in terms of data has now evolved.
So Zaid, firstly, thank you so much. Thank you for having me over. an opportunity to share thoughts. Also, share this platform with Rahoul. I think coming to your point in terms of how the BFSI industry has evolved, I'll pick up from where Rahoul sort of articulated, right? If we see across industries, I think BFSI is one industry which has seen a huge amount of disruption due to digital in the past few years. If you look at banking, and Rahoul sort of alluded to it, payments has been hugely disrupted. 260 million people in this country use UPI, and that number is only going to increase. If you see the smart handsets, 830 million in this country, and they are increasing at almost about 7.6 million per month, which is 76 lakhs per month. So we're going to see a huge explosion in the penetration, and thereby a huge explosion in the way consumption is happening. So for example, e-commerce, right? A lot of purchases are now getting done digitally online. Payments are being done digitally and online. What it does is leaves a huge footprint of data, and as a consumer or consumption of that data by the BFSI industry. Credit, for example, is the next which is getting disrupted. And we have seen in the last few years, banks and NBFCs are now actively leveraging the data that is generated due to the payments to create credit profiles. If you look at the India stack, for example, which is starting with Aadhaar, on top of it UPI, on top of it DigiLocker, and then the Sahamati layer. Identity of the individual is getting established due to Aadhaar. And again, BFSI, be it banks, NBFCs, are leveraging that identity to then link up with the payments that are happening, or the digital footprint that's being created due to payments, to create credit profile, and therefore improve the penetration of credit. So this is where BFSI or banking in particular is now leveraging the data that's available, right? And obviously the transactions, the UPI, the Aadhaar, the Sahamati layer, all of it is creating massive explosion of data, right? And we've seen this evolution in the past 5 to 7 years. It's probably gathering momentum. If you see securities, for example, just stepping outside of banking in the BFSI space, securities is completely disrupted by digital. It's purely digital, which is driving the industry, right? And therefore, the ability to buy, sell securities at nanosecond speeds is also creating a huge amount of data, right? Which then can be used by wealth managers to create very specific portfolios for individuals, right? And we are seeing that evolution happen where wealth was restricted to HNIs is now being driven to affluent and to the mass affluent across, right, from tier 1 to tier 3 to tier 4 cities in the country. So we are seeing a huge penetration of BFSI in the last 5 years. A lot of it is being enabled by the data that is being created in the ecosystem. And my belief is this is only going to explode as we progress. Number of e-commerce transactions, the payments thereof, the footprint that's created, which is then leveraged by banks, NBFCs, security firms, wealth firms, to create credit or wealth profiles, to create products, personalized and improve penetration. So I think it's an interesting journey that we've had, but the next decade seems even more interesting as data and as penetration sort of improves.
Absolutely, completely agree with you. I am looking at another angle, which is saying that how has customer experience changed with data? Like I remember this interesting conversation which I had with you some time back, which said that even cows in India have an Aadhaar card. Am I right?
Yeah.
So coming from there, some of the things that we are now taking for granted. I have not paid my electricity bill. I can pay it at 2 a.m. Sleeping in my bed. I don't. I can be virtually onboarded into a banking ecosystem just by using my PAN Aadhaar and of course both of you have given huge amount of numbers. If I have any query on my credit card, earlier I used to wait for IVRs endlessly to answer, for a call center to answer. Today, so as far as customer experience,
exponentially by volume growing, and I think banking is evolving into an experience-driven enterprise. That means also over here, the customer experience is now what is to be also emphasized, and it's to the banks to develop and further take the challenge really up, because it's unavoidable to understand and foresee client demands and deliver that experiences. And that also goes, of course, hand in hand with more focus on big data, with a very refined focus on analytics. And these will be the key areas, you can say, also for the next best banks to perform. That means I will have to understand with insights on consumer behavior and spending patterns, which I now can connect to a lot of connections of the different spends consumers make, who are their personas, and then as a bank be there first and really emphasize this customer experience. So I think the big data, which is just accumulating, has brought up also the demand of more real-time focus in analytics, real-time models, which are then developing further down to all these ML-driven modelings, and also using alternate data, marrying and amalgamating it with first-party data, in really understanding customers one by one, because we cannot keep it anymore to homogeneous behavior. We cannot keep it also to heterogeneous behavior. It's actually what you would call fragmented markets. But there is another angle to it. India is huge. While our cosmopolitan tier 1, tier 2 cities, like Amit also was confirming, are already at a very higher developed standard, and also consumer behavior is over here a very different genetics. The expansion through the digital angle that has emphasized also a reach for a bank and BFC. I can suddenly take loan approvals into consideration of customers that are like a triple-digit number of kilometers away to me through digital connectivity. But who is then my customer? That becomes the next challenge. And that is also over here whether I want to counterbalance not non-performing assets, whether I really want to mitigate risks, or if I also want to do a healthy growth on existing customers. Because also for any business over here, the cross-selling and further engaging with a client who's with me, but he may not be with me at a golden level. But how can I serve him with more solutions which really are towards his needs, understanding him? There I need data, especially because we are across the whole country networking now our offerings, but we cannot face anymore that intensively our customers one-on-one. So whether you look even at NBFCs who are going again, so to say, almost retro, like we in a discussion just last week identified with personal visits in rural areas to sanctify a kind of B2B loan. Still, there's data which is required to also evaluate that loan applicant's business for the future. Will that also take off? And again, you're looking at a lot of data positions to be networked. So the focus on big data and analytics, where banking, in my understanding, is on a transition and the next level, really big evolution into an experience-driven industry for customers is the challenge, but also where practically the huge opportunities lie.
Wonderful. Amit, can you tell us about some of the experiences that you've seen and what we are likely to see in terms of customer experience?
Oh, absolutely. I'll just add to the points that Rahoul made. I think very pertinent. If I look at the India stack, right, I'm just following on that. Sahamati, which is the top layer, right, the account aggregator layer, it's going to be, we expect it to be like the UPI movement that happened for payments. Sahamati will transform the way credit is sort of looked at, the way wealth is sort of looked at in this country. And that is going to drive a lot of customer experience in the country. So when we talk of customer experience, what does it mean when it comes to financial services product? So if I get specific, right, when it comes to, let's say, a personal loan or a credit card, it's the ease with which I can get my personal loan or my credit card. When it comes to housing, for example, it's the experience is about how do I enable my documentation, how do I enable my financial ability as far as the bank is concerned, right? So it's about convenience, in personal loan, credit card, it's about ease, it's about speed. When it comes to housing, definitely it's about ease, it's about speed, but it's also about convenience, right? Similarly about wealth as well, right? So with that in background, and when it comes to enablers like Sahamati, right? And I'm looking forward, right? I'm looking 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line. Banks are going to be enabled with huge amount of data, right? It's a consent-based framework. So today, if I go to the bank and look for a housing loan, I need to submit my documentation, my salary slips or my income statements, my bank account transaction history that I've been regular in paying. Of course, the credit bureau input sort of helps, right? But the bank never gets a view of, let's say, what my net worth is, right? Or what sort of assets I am holding, what sort of liabilities I am holding. Now, Sahamati as a framework is a huge enabler in that direction, right? Which will enable the bank to get a 360-degree view. It's a consent-based framework, of course, which means that I don't have to approach the bank and submit my salary statement or my income proof, right? And that is where the friction in the process gets taken away, right? And that is where the experience would significantly improve. Secondly, when it comes to areas like wealth, the wealth advisor would be able to tailor make propositions. So if I'm heavy on fixed income in my investments, how do I then tailor make or how do I alter my portfolio towards equity? And if it's heavy on equity, then how do I balance between large cap and small caps and aspects like those? So huge amount of data that, again, consent-based, that the wealth manager will have access to, right? And from an experience perspective, he or she will then be able to provide a very personalized solution as far as the customer is concerned, right? Similarly, with respect to insurance, again, it definitely would give a view in terms of how much I'm covered from a life perspective, right? And then how do I then increase my, if there is, how do I then tailor make a product, maybe on the term side, to cover incremental risk or residual risk that I as an individual might have, right? So we're going to see personalization, as Rahoul spoke of. We're going to see more ease and convenience. We're going to see ability to offer instant products, when it comes to personal and car. That might not be true when it comes to housing or wealth, So what that entails is how banks are able to then leverage the data that is generated or made available by the ecosystem. And Sahamati framework is a classic example. How do I then run analytics? How do I leverage AI, right, to assess the risk in the process? How do I then leverage or create products based on the risk and the experience that I have to sort of improve the overall customer experience, right? So I think we will see the evolution of financial services industry in that direction. We made certain progress in the last.
Absolutely.
So if you look at personal loans, if you look at credit cards, I think those are completely digital enabled today. Speed, convenience, experience matters. I think Sahamati is going to impact other products, which we call as assisted digital, in the process.
And absolutely. And just to add on, Amit, what you said, because
sure,
combing through all of this data is the next challenge and also the must do for
absolutely.
a bank, because people will feel ease at banking on their own. That is today also in light of our post-COVID era, where digital
absolutely.
adoption to a lot of people just happened, what they don't want to walk away from. So they want to have, the customers want to have experiences with tailored proposition, and they want to be given control. And I think this is also a learning which we have to not only just see and adapt to, but which we have to nurture. Like also control about my information. That is definitely including also that I, as a partner, especially a financial partner, where I park my investments, where I protect my future, where I protect also my family, my spouse, whoever I want to include in this, where I have also a partner who understands what that whole information is worth to me. Opt-outs, and not only just taking, but making it like this in control, and again also more automated processes that really transform a service quality. I think this is what we will also see in the banking industry for sure, taking off grandly.
Yeah, and Rahoul, if I may just add, you're absolutely spot on. I think a lot of players in the industry are today struggling with, single version of truth, right? Because if I'm a customer on the liability side, as I spoke of, savings account, current account, how easily I can be onboarded. The bank has a lot of information about me. Can that be leveraged on the asset side? Can that be leveraged on the wealth side? Can that be leveraged on the distribution side? Now, adding to it is the data that is available in the ecosystem because of the payments transaction that I have been doing, because of my relationship with other banks, other wealth players, other insurance companies, which is now available through the Samad. How do I bring the data which is internal and the external? And then you have external verified data sources, right? For example, the income tax one pays, or if I'm a small businessman, the GST that I pay, right? And there are those APIs that are available which tell how much business I'm doing or how much income that I'm earning, right? If I'm a self-employed, a non-salaried kind. So how do we bring this data together to create that profile is going to be utmost critical, right? And you also mentioned of the risk, right? Because today, if I take a housing loan, right, it's a 15-year housing loan. The bank does the assessment when I get the loan. But through that tenure of 15 years, my income keeps increasing, right? Or there could be a situation where somebody loses the job, right? And it creates a risk to the bank. Today, there is no way the bank is able to sort of assess that, look at its portfolio, look at individual transaction and verify that. But again, when it comes to Sahamati, the bank will have an ability to sort of monitor the transaction or the portfolio through that tenure of 10 or 15 years, as the case may be. And if my income, let's say, doubles after 7 years, that would I be eligible to get a more finer rate? That's where the personalization angle will come in as we progress. That is where so it's not going to be a situation where you assess upfront and then you stay with it for 15 years, because things change dynamically, right? So that is where again personalization will come in. That is where personalized service will come in. But the challenge is, how do you assemble the data that is internal, the data in the ecosystem, the data that is available from verified data sources that is available, and I think that is a challenge that banks face,
and build the appropriate consumer profile personas.
Oh, absolutely.
So if I, for example, look at all verified sources, at all touch points, and see the increasing network of these data points, a synflood of information, first of all, comes to me where I have to read through it. I have to practically convert it, transform it into understanding a customer. Also, over here, what lies as next level is not only just great data scientists that are in any case knowing their absolutely whereabouts in feature plot, analysis, model running, testings, but interpreting all of this. Interpreting and coming to a conclusion to then really know, okay, this is a customer who is actually interested in that. And that is from all the funnel where one can think down at a massive entry level, what all can be stitched together as information. The only exit point which would count to give a right proposition, to understand what happened in the 7 years, where is my customer as of now, if I have also his overview of payments that are happening in his cosmos of a family, of a household, etc., and gather these kind of, so to say, concentric gravity circles. He alone, his nearest spouse, etc., etc., and then make over here really tailored proposition. There's a lot more than just to gather and stitch these data points together, but also interpreting them and understanding consumer behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Rahoul, Zaid, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, Zaid. We are just taking off.
Please. Amit, you had a point?
Yeah, sorry. I was just making one point to Rahoul's. And what we see is banks, NBFC also sort of struggling with with the technology, right? Because legacy often creates barriers, right? And I think the technology landscape to assimilate the data to build generative AI has dramatically shifted, and that is one challenge that we see banks face, or NBFCs face, or securities firm face. The second being about the capability, right? And when it comes to capability, it's about creating the right organization, the right people with that capability, the right partnerships is very important, right? I think those are areas where we see banks, NBFCs, wealth firms, or securities firms often getting challenged. Very quickly, the legacy is being created, and the legacy is then is one of the how should I put it, is one of the challenging points, right, in this journey.
Exactly, you said it. I mean, we are talking about the enormous accumulation of information and data, and then also what to read out of this. But on the other hand, there's also technology, there's also analytics, and that is just overthrown with the generative AI, which is also today, of course, creating these personas to a level by itself. And still, where are then the human readouts practically to stitch it together, understanding a customer? And we have also just recently discussed, for example, that there's massive different maturity also of the businesses, NBFCs, at what level they have currently onboarded also technologies to consume and to also work through all of these data tsunamis which are rolling towards them. And another fright, which may also be an industry challenge in the BFSI sector, at the same time as data is coming in, you have, as organization, adapted at one point to something extremely advanced like technology, but 3 years down the line, or perhaps even sooner, there's another technology platform, there's another technology angle which stands out to be the next game changer. Now, if you as organization have to, so to say, jump from one train to the other every 3 years, that is a tough journey. And also over here, of course, organizations are on the one hand under the pressure to deliver to the customer, who is getting more and more self-driven and demanding, but on the other hand are still figuring out this whole technology highway and how to cope with that speed on it.
Absolutely.
So now that we've spoken about AI, I have a few pointed things to ask about that. One is saying that do we see generative AI being used for predictive analysis in the BFSI sector? Is algorithmic trading going to come through, and is it going to be used in a larger way? And risk management. How does risk management get affected in the entire series? So these three things, how will generative AI affect? I mean, in small measures it's being done, but how will generative AI affect any of these?
I can start. Of course, predictive analytics is practically the only way how to understand from isolated data points coming together pertaining to one customer, what practically the customer profile would be, anticipating customer needs And whether you then marinate historical data, current data, further center of gravity data, meaning also from spouse and around, you need predictive analytics. And also what I see even at a company that is focusing on building consumer data solutions, generative AI is today something we internally even need to use and want to use to enhance our understanding. It is, I think, then touching, of course, very quickly into 30,000 feet hemispheres where one has to say, okay, what is then practically the interaction between the actual human data business scientists, analysts, and machine generated, and how can that then be also still a very fruitful and enhancing correlation, and who's in control also of what? Because things like just to go by machine-driven decisions prompted is another question and another topic, and perhaps another webinar of its own. But in this case, definitely generative AI has to and is, I think, already disrupting and affecting BFSI tremendously.
Amit, what would you say about that? Especially on algorithmic trading.
No, I completely agree. I think we are going to see, in some ways, algorithmic trading, Zahid, is very much, we see, certain fund managers sort of using that. Will that gain momentum? Probably yes. But we will also see generative AI play, particularly in portfolio management, right? So if you look at today the wealth tech industry, right, you have players who are purely digital. Now, wealth is a bit of an assisted digital, right? Because you need assistance in understanding the schemes, the way risk is embedded in them. So it's a bit assisted digital. I think that's where generative AI will make an impact in terms of making very specific recommendations. So today, if you look at the wealth tech platforms that are there, they have the ability to make the recommendations, right, based on individual risk profiling. But very often the recommendations that they make may or may not sort of appeal to the customer, right? Based on his or her sort of past experience, I think that's where generative AI is going to come in, to enable specific security recommendation, or be it a specific fund scheme recommendation from an asset manager, or an alternate investment fund, or a real estate investment sort of fund, right? I think that's where we are going to see generative AI sort of making impact, right? And outside of, let's say, the wealth algorithmic trading, I think generative AI will also make an impact on the risk side, right? In terms of predicting what potentially could be the risk drivers, right? And as I earlier said, right, today risk is assessed only at origination, right? Risk will now be assessed not just at origination, but through the length of that relationship, be it on the lending side, be it on the wealth side, right? And I think that's where generative AI is going to come in, collect the data in the ecosystem, and make a prediction to the fund manager or to the credit, saying, look, this is where the profiles can go wrong. One good example where we've seen recently is GST data, right? And this was particularly true for gems and jewelry, right? Where GST filing went down in a location like Surat, which is a huge base for gems and jewelry, right? And this particular bank was able to assess based on the GST filing that there is going to be a credit or risk to the credit that potentially come in because it appears the sales are going down, and they actually sort of curtail their credit to the extent possible, which in hindsight was absolutely right, because we've seen the impact on James and Jewelry in current calendar year, right? So how do we use this ecosystem data and create not just on the customer experience side, but on the risk side or on the product side, I think is where we're going to see impact coming in. And the impact is going to be particularly on the digital assisted products, So I have no doubt in my mind that that's where generative AI is going to play a big role.
Wonderful. So what I'm saying is, lastly, to one more thing that has changed, especially in data, is the India Data Protection Act. So DPDP is something that's actually personalized data. I mean, you actually have a case where a person can opt out of providing data for certain requirements. So how do you think? And second big thing in that is that there are geographical boundaries for data which data cannot travel across. So how does that change what is happening in the industry? Rahoul, can we have a word from you?
Yeah, I think data portability and practically also a right to be forgotten is something which we see that opt-in, opt-out options have to be now also clearly communicated. That is part and parcel, again, of the consumer who wants to be in control of things. While we debate and discuss here, of course, very much in very deep levels how data technology will disrupt further the BFSI sector, the customer who's all around these companies, banks, insurances, NBFCs also wants to feel in control what is practically happening to the information of him or herself. And that's why one has to also, of course, see under DPD and GDPR and other data privacy guidelines in the past, in the present, and also in the future, that one should start thinking very carefully, of course, to look at data models to be built on a sustainable way, where also today one has to be aware of that if consumers opt out of a specific data position not to be used anymore about them, that my models as organization do not go completely overboard and needs to be revamped. That's another aspect where practically, again, also the industries and the industry BFSI, perhaps in particular, and also all the data one can trace and track and collate around customers need to be looked upon, really having a second and third step in mind before you take the first. And surely also data privacy goes then to, that one says data localization, like you say, national boundaries. Today, for example, as market research organization, we are very much also audited where our solutions lie, what data one has to be very transparent, goes where, and that it does not even also reside or gets somewhere into a kind of data vault and just gets stacked over there. This transparency is then, I think, what one can think of in an extended version, not only from service providers, alternate data companies, to banks, to NBFCs, but the banks and NBFCs to customers.
Correct, absolutely. What I would like from Amit is one last closing question because we've had too many questions. So, from a customer's point of view, how has the Data Protection Act changed their lives? Because you must be dealing with a lot of customers, banks, financial institutions, insurance companies. Has that changed their lives in any way? The way they work, the way they address customers?
So Zaid, the implementation of the data protection bill is underway, right? The bill is passed, but the implementation is underway, right? Yeah, in about 6 months. You're right. As Rahoul said, right? I think one of the big benefits of the data protection bill is going to be the ability to opt out, right? Ability to rely on a consent-based kind of a relationship, right? Ability to ensure that personal data is not misused, right? Because today, look, as part of campaigns, marketing, there is a lot of access to personal data, right? And I think that responsibility is going to shift to the BFSI players and generally to the industry, right? Not just BFSI, right? So the consent-based is going to play a huge part, right? And to that extent, the security of the personal data is going to be of paramount, right? Especially in the digital footprint. And through this conversation, we've spoken of how the digital footprint is created in terms of the payments, in terms of the way we buy on the e-commerce and the way we pay, right? And how that can be leveraged to create a credit profile, how that can be used to lend, and how that can be used to assess risk, right? Somewhere that personalized data is being used through this journey, right? And how do we protect that is, I think, where the data protection bill makes a maximum impact, right? Yes, there is cost to implementation. All players will have to be mindful of that, but it is going to safeguard the consumer or the customer in terms of his data not getting misused beyond the purpose he or she has provided it for.
Wonderful. Can I throw open the if any of the audience has any questions, you can put it in the chat and I will ask the speakers to respond. Okay, there's a very interesting question saying that the question is for Amit Wagh, saying that why do cows need Aadhaar card? I think I mentioned it. So
no, so look, I think
you've given me a very good explanation. I remember.
No, so look, as part of the lending, right? Lending to what is called as milch cattle, right? And this is part of the agri financing, right? Is very important, right? Very often, in the animal husbandry industry, they use, let's say in this case, a cow to get multiple loans. So the same cow is financed by multiple banks, right? And when banks go to sort of recover, there are multiple lenders who are standing there, right? So that is where I think some of this is playing a part, and typically banks, mark their assets. So the same asset is not, in this case, it's a milch cattle, is not used for getting loans from multiple banks, right? So that is where I think,
yeah. So that's true. Another point, I think it's more of a point that has been raised, is that there is a huge pushback to share data, which is part of the Data Protection Act that we spoke about. So there is the pushback in terms of sharing data, and in fact what you said, Amit, in terms of consent from the customer is something that's very important. So interesting. I think we've had a good session. And Rahoul, any final words?
I think, and I can perhaps also find the words to mark it up as a personal impression. Can only look at industries here in India, especially the BFSI sector, with great excitement, because also this is practically enabling so much population of this country to be in connection with financial service products and the benefits. That's the one side of the medal. It does come with a lot of challenges, as much as this is the, I think, lifetime opportunity also of one of the greatest digital nations India proves to be, even globally, that it has the possibility to offer financial services to the most remote existing people in this country. The challenges lie then, which I think, in this session, and I would really like to thank also Amit very, very much for sharing his views and taking the time here with us today. The challenges lie in a lot of the data, technology, understanding consumers, and then on top of this, of course, also taking consumers into considerations, not just like as data points to collect, but actually give back and make that somebody who's your customer in full control what he wants to do. There's a lot of challenges and a lot of also, I think, great things to be coming up still in the future. And I personally, coming from Germany and starting this enterprise here in India, market research company, find it a very smiling fact to see that today at highest levels, European countries are sending their people here. We just had it as a German delegation coming here, being fascinated about the UPI payment possibility and want to have Indian experts implementing it abroad.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Amit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rahoul. Thank you, Zaid. Thank you for having me over. Very much enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much.
It was wonderful having you. The insights that we got were really useful, and I'm sure each one of us who participated in this would find it very useful. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.